Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Off to the Races. I'm your horse racing analyst, Alec, and on this week's show, I will be recapping week 1 of Saratoga, as well as looking forward to the Haskell and the Coaching Club American Oaks, featuring my favorite horse this year, Guarana. Last week was the opening of arguably the best meet in the country for horse racing, Saratoga. The meet got off to a great start with Comical winning the Schuylerville in fine fashion as Comical, Kiss the Girl, and Shippy were 1, 2, 3 in an exciting Schuylerville. Then in the quick call, Listing came from behind, my pick, to win the quick call, finishing very fast in between horses and on the outside. So it was a great opening day, and that kicked things off to a great, so far, Saratoga meet. The next day we had an upset winner in the Forbidden Apple, which I picked, Mr. Haverkamp. I felt proud of his performance. I was glad that I was able to pick him, and Mr. Haverkamp proved himself that he can really run with some of the better turf horses in America. Then on Saturday, the Sanford went to By Your Side, a nice maiden winner at Churchill Downs before, and in the Diana, it was Sister Charlie coming off a very long layoff to win the Diana over Rushing Fall and Homerique, Chad Brown's 3 big female turf horses. I'm excited to see how these 3 do in the future. In fact, they may all show up in the Beverly D. I guess that I was wrong. I think Rushing Fall might not be able to go the long distances, so I'll just see how she does in the Beverly D. But Sister Charlie could be really, really good for the rest of this year. Overall, it was a very good opening week at Saratoga. There are a few races this weekend where there are horses that could be in much bigger spots. For example, race 8 at Saratoga on Friday, you have Engage and 7 Trumpets, both in last year's H. Allen Jerkins Memorial, which is a grade 1. So very high quality horses in that allowance race. Then at Monmouth on Saturday, which is also Haskell Day, you have the Molly Pitcher, which has Midnight Bisou in it, and the Matchmaker, which has Competition of Ideas in it. So a few very good horses in some not so huge races. And I really think that Competition of Ideas, and especially Midnight Bisou, could walk home with championships. Competition of Ideas would have to work for it, but they're both very good horses that are in not so big races. In this Friday's Lake George Stakes at Saratoga, I'm picking Regal Glory, the longest shot of the Chad Brown runners. Number 1, I think she's the best value because all Chad Brown horses are pretty good in graded stakes races on the turf. And number 2, she won the Penn Oaks pretty nicely in her last start and has been doing well in graded stakes, such as a second in the Appalachian at Keeneland earlier this year. Dog Tag and Blowout, they're good horses, but they don't present as much value. So that is why I am picking Regal Glory in this race. It's a small field in this weekend's Coaching Club American Oaks, but the number 1 horse, Guarana, is a big potential star. She won her first race by so many lengths, more than a dozen, and then she backed that performance up with an even more impressive performance over the Kentucky Oaks winner in the Acorn, tracking extremely fast fractions and winning in stakes record time. So now the question has to be answered, what is she going to do here? It'll be interesting to find out. She's going to be the easy winner of this race. I don't see anyone beating her. The Black-Eyed Susan winner, Point of Honor, is also here, but I don't think overall that she has a shot at beating Guarana. She's just in another league. But the race for second would probably be between Champagne Anyone and Point of Honor. Both are solid horses that can compete in graded stakes races. So Guarana by 6 lengths or so, and then I'm going to say Point of Honor, Champagne Anyone. It's going to be a very chalky race in my opinion. Guarana 2-5, 1-5, maybe 1-9. Point of Honor and Champagne Anyone will be about 4-6-1 or so. It will be extremely fun to watch to see how good Guarana can be. She's got the 3-year-old filly division under some warnings here because she's going to just blow everyone out of the water coming up. The Shuvi is a nice race, and it also is the return of Wowcat. I loved this horse last year, who was a fast closing second in the Breeders' Cup Distaff behind the very good Monomoy Girl, who hasn't returned yet either. But Wowcat, I see a lot of potential in. When she first came from Chile, I was excited. Although she lost her first race, I believe it was the Shuvi, to Farrell, I thought, she has potential. Farrell was moving out on her. Then third in the personal ensign behind two very top horses, Abel Tasman and Alec. Then she won the Beldame in a fast time. Then second in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, which I just loved that performance of hers, coming from way behind to finish second behind Monomoy Girl, as mentioned before. But this is her return, and this is where she faces one of her more tougher tests, where she faces She's a Julie, who has been very good for Steve Asmussen, and coming off a third place finish in the Fleur de Lis. It'll be nice to see who wins between them, but if Sister Charlie didn't win the Diana last week, I might be a little hesitant on Wowcat, but Sister Charlie proved that she could come off the bench and win off a long layoff. And Wowcat, same exact connections, and coming off the Breeders' Cup. So I think that she can do it. She's a Julie will be a nice second, but Forever Liesel could be good. Although she isn't that fast, she has been consistent in listed stakes, so maybe watch out for her as we go to the Shuvi, where Wowcat will make her return. The Haskell. I like to think of it as a semi-final for the Travers with the Jim Dandy, as many horses from the Haskell and the Jim Dandy go to the finals, which is the Travers. So this first semi-final, the Haskell, features Maximum Security and Mucho Gusto and King for a Day. So 3 very good horses in that race. King for a Day, coming off that upset victory in the Pegasus Stakes over Maximum Security, and it looks like those two could battle it out again, but Mucho Gusto is a very fast horse on the front end who has won his last 2 stakes races at Santa Anita. Although losing at the 1 1/8 distance at Sunland Park, I think he can come back from that and win this Haskell. Also, it doesn't hurt that Bob Baffert has won so many Haskells in his career, so the chances of Mucho Gusto winning the Haskell have just gone up. So I'm going to pick him to win the Haskell and hope for the best that he can be a top horse going into the Travers. I saw a lot in him going into this year. Also, there's a horse named Spun to Run who has been doing well in allowance races, but he's been at Parks, so I'm not really sure what to think of that. Jovia, who was third in the Belmont, also my long shot pick in the Belmont, who I was very proud of when he finished third in the Belmont. I think he isn't going to have as much luck this time because it might not be as speed favoring as Belmont was on that day. But Jovia is a good horse, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit the board just like he did in the Belmont. So that is the Haskell for this weekend. I'm very excited to watch it. That's a wrap for this week's episode on Off to the Races. On next week's show, we'll recap the Haskell, looking for horses that could be in the Travers, a big race at Saratoga at the end of the meet, near the end of the meet, as well as looking at the Jim Dandy, which headlines a stacked group of graded stakes on that day, which includes the Alfred G. Vanderbilt, where we could see Matoli and World of Trouble, the 2 top sprinters in America. I'll see you next week on Off to the Races.